Okay, that appears to be live now. So the mock trial round is now in session, and I'm turning the courtroom over to Judge Rangel. Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, good morning, folks. And again, thank you so much for all of your patience. I'm incredibly impressed with all the preparation this has taken and the adjustment to doing it digitally. So we're going to get through this and it's going to be great. The first thing I'd like to do is swear in the parties. The rules do state that each party will stand and raise their right hand while being sworn. Team members, please stand and raise your right hand. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? All right. Witnesses, please stand and do the same. Raising your right hand, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? If you so swear, please state yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, gallery members, including teacher and attorney coaches, family members, and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? I know they're not presently admitted as a Zoom participant, but they may be present in the room, and we'd ask that they so swear.
Yes.
Thank you. Scoring panelists, please stand and raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on then to the beginning of our trial here. Are there any preliminary issues or housekeeping matters that we need to hear from the parties before the presentation of witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to request permission to constructively publish exhibits by assuming that that yourself and each of the scoring members has access to your own copies of the exhibits.
All right, thank you, Mr. Littlewood. Anyone from the prosecution object to that?
No, Your Honor. Prosecution
All
would
right.
like to ensure the same.
All right, thank you. And let me just double check here. I believe my copy of those exhibits are included in these materials. Let's see here, and perhaps our hearing host can help me out here. The packet I received contains a PDF with the exhibits listed. I don't have the actual exhibits. Am I missing those somewhere?
I believe they should be at the end of the bench brief.
Okay, let me pull.
But I can verify that.
Give me just one moment to make sure I'm looking at the correct document here. And I received the judge and scoring volunteer brief. If there's a different document, I am not. I'm not in receipt of that.
The exhibits are also available on the web portal for the round.
Okay, that's where I just was. Okay. Help me out there.
Right.
I'm sorry, folks. Hold on just one moment. Okay. I'm in the judge and volunteer area. Should I be looking somewhere different?
One moment, let me.
And then can a scoring panelist pop on here and let me know? Obviously, it's important that you see those exhibits as well. Do you folks have those?
I do not.
Okay.
Likewise.
All right. So not the participants' problem here. It seems like they certainly expected that we had access to those documents. If we can just clarify where we get that, then we definitely can do the constructive publishing.
I believe that if you go to the portal, there's a tab marked case file and rules file.
Okay.
And at the end of the case file is where the exhibits are located.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. All right. And scoring participants, if you can check that out as well, I want to make sure, obviously, that it's working for everyone. It does look like you can download that case file as a PDF. And let me zoom here to those last few pages. Sure does. Thank you, sir. And they are labeled by exhibit numbers. I do see photographs. All right, some fairly gruesome photographs. There we go. Okay, so I've got those now. Can I have my scoring participants let me know if they've accessed those documents?
I also have them.
Thank you.
Yes, I have them.
That was Ms. Peterson. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, Your Honor, I have them as well.
All right, great. Then the defense's motion to constructively publish those items will be received and granted. If you'll just refer to those with the proper exhibit number, and we'll allow time for all of the parties to view those, and we can move forward in that fashion. Anything further from either side? All right, having heard nothing.
Sorry,
no problem.
my computer was taking a while. The prosecution would like to inquire into the court's preference on screen sharing and when to do so.
Thank you. So if we're constructively publishing those documents, it looks like we can access them independently. Assuming there's no annotations or if there's anything you'd like to direct the court's attention or the jury's attention to, you certainly can share your screen in that manner to highlight portions of the document or things of that nature. Does that make sense?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
No problem.
We'd also like to ask if recrosses and redirects will be allowed in this court.
I'm going to defer to our host here. I know that we're obviously concerned about our timing here today. Is there anything in the rules prohibiting that, sir?
It is up to the judge and, of course, the amount of time that's available. So
right.
Perhaps you can check in with the timekeepers at the end of each party's case to determine whether there's, or each party's examination to determine if there's enough time.
All right. So I will say this in response to that motion. I will allow a redirect by the examining attorney. At this point in time, I don't intend to allow recross.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Okay, if there are any other issues.
One moment, Your Honor. It appears that the live feed is not appearing for some folks, so I'm going to stop it and restart it. If we could just pause for just a moment.
No problem. I'm sure there's a lot of people who want to watch these young folks.
Okay, thank you.
I see the notification there. We'll wait for the go ahead and then we'll begin opening statements.
Okay.
All
Your
set?
Honor, it appears the feed is live again.
All right, thank you. If I can have video feeds from both of the attorneys handling the opening statements. All right, great. We've got Ms. Thompson and Ms. Damiana. All right, we will begin. Having selected our jury, the people may present their prosecution's opening.
Are the timekeepers ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
And the defense timekeeper?
Yes.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Get out, get in, get even. Today, you will hear the story of Mackenzie Brackman, a devoted defense attorney, somebody who helped other people that usually wouldn't get a second chance. He would work day in, day out, tirelessly to help his clients. With the little free time he had, he devoted that time to a local high school mock trial team for CHS. Some of the people on his team were Alex Cifuentes, Avery Becker, and Taylor Perkins. Alex Cifuentes respected Mr. Brackman. They saw how hard he worked and how much he cared about each of the people on the team. Taylor Perkins never had a problem with Mr. Brackman. She saw that he cared about the people on the team and that he was a successful attorney. Then there was Avery Becker. Avery Becker had no respect for Mr. Brackman. They believed that as a high school student, they were a better attorney. So they didn't listen to Mr. Brackman's advice when he was only trying to help them. They would get into a lot of arguments because of this. And one heated argument was when Avery Becker won Best Attorney and Best Closing during a regional competition. During practice, Mr. Brackman humiliated them in front of everybody. They said that they didn't deserve the award because they didn't put in all the work that each of their team members put in. Avery Becker became outraged, impulsive, and angry. So, Mr. Brackman finally had enough of the disrespect. He said, "Get out. Get out of practice and get out of my life." So, Avery Becker went to his car. They wrote Worst Attorney Award on it. And of course, after, she felt horrible, but this proves that they're able to act on their impulses. On March 6th, 2020, Mr. Brackman found himself home alone. An intruder matching the height and build of the defendant, Avery Becker, came into his house. This break-in later resulted in the death of a devoted coach, Mackenzie Brackman. Today, the prosecution will call 3 witnesses. First, you'll hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak. They'll explain to you through ring videos that an intruder matching the height and build of Avery Becker got into Mr. Brackman's house on March 6th. Then Kyle Kuzak, as a crime scene reconstruction investigator, will explain what happened after Avery Becker got into the house. Then you'll hear from Alex Cifuentes. Alex Cifuentes will explain to you how bad the relationship was between Mr. Brackman and Avery Becker. They'll tell you about these texts that they received from Avery Becker saying that they would get in to Mr. Brackman's house, that Avery Becker would get even with Mr. Brackman. Then the defense will call three witnesses. They'll call Blake Van Owen, Taylor Perkins, and Avery Becker. Blake Van Owen doesn't have half as much experience as our expert witnesses. They couldn't make it as a cop. They couldn't make it as a mall cop. They couldn't make it as an SRO. So they started a private practice. Using their limited knowledge, they tried to point out holes in our investigators' investigations. But as you'll hear from the prosecution, Kyle Kuzak and Detective Jordan Markowitz did a thorough investigation to make sure that their conclusion was correct. Then you'll hear from Taylor Perkins. Taylor Perkins has a bias in today's case. Taylor Perkins is best friends with the defendant, Avery Becker. She'll do anything to make sure Avery Becker is out of harm's way. Then you'll hear from the defendant, Avery Becker. Avery Becker will try and tell you that the relationship between them and Mr. Brackman wasn't that bad. But as you'll hear from Taylor Perkins and Alex Cifuentes, they constantly argued. And this resulted in stress on both of them and all of their team members. Today, as you hear the prosecution, you'll hear 3 things to be true. Avery Becker was told to get out of practice. Avery Becker, on March 6th, got in to Mr. Brackman's house, and Avery Becker got even. Today, the prosecution has the burden of proof. That means we must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty. As you hear the prosecution's case, you'll realize that there is no burden. There's just proof that Avery Becker was told to get out. Avery Becker got in, and Avery Becker got even. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Opening for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We are complex people with complex problems, and complex problems don't have simple answers. The case the prosecution will present for you today is an attempt to answer a complex problem, Mackenzie Brackman's tragic and untimely death, with a simple answer. Avery Becker didn't like Mr. Brackman and therefore must have killed him. Simple, right? But what you will see when you look below the surface of the prosecution's case is that their simple answer doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because Avery Becker did not kill Mackenzie Brackman. The defense will present the defendant, Avery Becker, and her alibi, an alibi that was never investigated into by the police on the prosecution's side, despite their knowledge of one. Today, instead of speculation on part of the police, Avery will get up on the stand and tell you herself where she was when Mr. Brackman died. She was at the mall with her friend, Taylor, looking for her missing phone. But you don't just have to take Avery's word for it. Taylor Perkins will also tell you that she and Avery were at the mall looking for Avery's phone on the day of Mr. Brackman's murder, March 6th, and had no intention of ever going near Mr. Brackman's home, especially since they didn't even know his address. Ms. Becker will also illuminate the nature of the relationship between herself and the late Mr. Brackman and how it was one of expected high school frustration, but certainly not murder. Not only this, but Ms. Becker will also testify to her relationship with Alex Cifuentes, showing that they were hardly close confidants, certainly not close enough to exchange a strain of text messages received by Detective Markowitz. Most importantly, though, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Becker will explain how her short-lived rash behavior after the regional tournament did not push her further into violent behavior, but rather to immediately see the error in her own ways and abandon such behavior. It didn't push her to plan to break into Mr. Brackman's house, but, as she will explain, motivated her to make amends for her past behavior and try to apologize. Unfortunately, despite her best efforts, she was never able to apologize, as Mackenzie Brackman was murdered shortly after. Ms. Becker will appear before you today, all with this apologetic spirit, certainly not one of unbridled violence. The defense will also present Blake Van Owen's investigation into the murder of Mr. Brackman, which takes into account the pieces of evidence the prosecution has ignored. Mr. Van Owen, an experienced private investigator, will explain what exactly happened on March 6th, using detailed analysis on both evidence gathered by the police and evidence the police failed to gather, including the phone records of Taylor Perkins, which saw Perkins in the vicinity of the mall at the time of Brackman's murder, lining up with Becker and Perkins' alibi. There is no doubt this case is a complex one and should be treated as such. However, the prosecution has ignored important pieces of evidence and reduced the complexity of the case to a simple answer. As you will see, the clean line of events Detective Markowitz and Kyle Cusack have constructed from the evidence they found at Mr. Brackman's home on March 6th does exactly this. Today, the defense will show you that Detective Markowitz initially thought a former client could have killed Mr. Brackman, but failed to investigate any of those former clients, their whereabouts at the time of the murder, or even their names. The detective also failed to interview 7 out of the 9 members of the mock trial team, as well as failed to investigate the phone records of Alex Cifuentes. In short, ladies and gentlemen, the detective failed to investigate any theory that may have contradicted their own simple answer. Similarly, the defense will show that Kyle Cusack failed to consider that the knife used to murder Mr. Brackman and the knives Mr. Brackman had in his kitchen block were of completely different brands. He also failed to investigate the Ring doorbell records of Mr. Brackman, records which were vital to the line of events displayed in their theory of the case. Not only this, ladies and gentlemen, but the defense will present to you both Mr. Cusack and Detective Markowitz's striking negligence in investigating any suspects besides the defendant, Avery Becker. Although there were multiple other students on the mock trial team, only 2 were contacted. Mackenzie Brackman also had a life of his own as a criminal defense attorney, though Kyle Cusack and Detective Markowitz have narrowed a complex life into the confines of a single high school mock trial team. As stated before, none of his previous clients were investigated, nor any other possible suspects from other facets of his life. Ladies and gentlemen, today the prosecution must convince you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Avery Becker is guilty. However, the evidence they have built their case on only reveals a simple answer to a complex problem. The defense will make clear that there are pieces of evidence and alternative theories to the case that point in a direction other than a simple linear story, that true justice was ignored in favor of a simple, clean answer. We implore you to gasp not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Damiana. All right. I'm going to give the scorekeepers just one moment. And then it looks like, was it Klausner will present the first witness? We can have video feeds from both the witness, the prosecution's witness, the prosecution's attorney, and the defense. Right. I think we're waiting for one more. Ms. Miller, are we waiting for another participant from your team?
We are. Miss Klausner
Okay.
is just getting situated, but she should
No
be
problem.
good to go any moment now. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I'm ready.
All right. And I know your Zoom name there says Laura Thompson, but I believe it was Ms. Klausner, correct?
Yes, my name is Emma Klausner.
All right, Ms. Klausner, you can present your witness.
Okay. Detective, good morning, Detective. Would you please state your first and last name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, good morning. My name is Jordan Markowitz, and Markowitz is spelled Markowitz.
And would you tell me where your current place of occupation is?
Absolutely. I work at the Denver Police Department, or the DPD.
And how long have you worked with the DPD?
For 13 years now.
And what exactly is it that you do with them?
I am currently a homicide investigator with the DPD.
And as a homicide investigator, what do you do?
As a homicide investigator, I do just that when the DPD gets calls about reported homicides. I'm typically, along with my team of uniformed officers, one of the first detectives to arrive at a scene, and I just start to take photos of potential evidence and really just start to put the pieces together at scenes.
And do you have any specialized areas of expertise?
I do, yeah. I have a certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
What is all that? Cell phone data and forensic technology. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, so that really encompasses all of the science behind cell phones communications with cell towers, as well as on the forensic data side, how we can use a lot of that cell phone data in my work as a homicide investigator with the DPD.
And how does one get involved with this area? Did you have to go through any sort of specific process?
Yeah, so I had to take a 3-day certification course. As I mentioned previously, it was through the American Academy of Law Enforcement. And so it was a really extensive course for all 3 days, learning all about cell phone records, how to obtain them, how to interpret them, how to use different systems like the Cellbrite system, and then again, how to apply it to my work as a homicide investigator. And then at the end of those 3 days, we had to certification test just to prove our knowledge, and obviously I passed, and so now I'm certified.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert witness in cell phone data recovery and crime scene investigation.
All right. Any objection from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May I have permission to perform a voir dire on this witness?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Detective Markowitz, you did a 3-day training in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a really intense, exciting 3-day course. Yeah.
But you don't have any other training in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Like I said, I have that 3-day training course, which was really intense, and I learned a lot there. And I as well have just my police training.
Yes, and you don't have a degree in forensic data recovery either. As you stated, you are only a homicide police officer with this 3-day certification.
Yes, no degree, but I do have this really great certification.
And you don't have a degree in cellular electronics either, Detective.
I don't, but I don't think that prevents me from doing good police work.
And despite that, you have also never had an update on this 3-day certification course you took. Is that correct?
I haven't, but a lot of this information is still relevant.
Your Honor, forensic data recovery and cellular electronics are a highly technical area of expertise, and based on the fact that Detective Markowitz obtained her certification from a 3-day course alone, the defense would like to object to this certification as an expert in forensic investigation and cell phone forensics.
Thank you, Ms. Damiana. Ms. Klausner? Can you
Yes,
further support your request?
Although the detective's training was brief, it was very extensive and thoroughly prepared her to work with cell phone data recovery, and she fulfilled the requirements and is rightfully certified.
All right, thank you, Ms. Klausner. Having reviewed the rules of evidence in play here and having listened to the voir dire of the expert, the court will allow the expert testimony limited to this area of cell phone data and forensics. You may continue, Ms. Klausner.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to talk a little bit about Mackenzie Brackman's case. Is there anything significant to you about the date March 6th of 2020?
Yes, March 6, 2020 was the day that I was called to the scene of Mr. Brackman's home from a report of a passing motorist who saw Mr. Brackman's body passed out on the porch of his residence.
And after initial investigation, what were the initial things that you noticed upon your investigation at the scene?
Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as I arrived, I noticed the body that had been identified by that passing motorist. We later realized that it was, in fact...
Your Honor. Sorry, objection, Your Honor. I believe this question calls for a narrative answer.
All right, Ms. Damiana, thank you. Ms. Klausner, your response?
Yes, the detective is simply recounting what she saw at the scene, and walking us through how that affected her next steps in the investigation.
All right, thank you. I will overrule the objection. You may continue, Detective Markowitz.
Could you?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, what were the initial things that you noticed upon your arrival?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning earlier, when I initially responded and arrived at the scene, I noticed the body that we later identified as, in fact, Mr. Mackenzie Brackman's, passed out, and it appeared that he had a large stab wound. And then I also noticed a knife that I later realized was the murder weapon through my investigation.
And after initial investigation, were you able to receive any sort of other evidence?
I was, yes. Mr. Brackman happened to have a Ring video system on his home, which is a sort of like camera and doorbell dual system. And so I was able to obtain some of the relevant videos from March 6, 2020 that were recorded on that system.
Would you recognize those videos if you were to see them today?
I would, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, let the record reflect that I'm about to present Exhibit 10.
All right, if the participants can turn to Exhibit 10, and our scoring participants obviously as well.
Can everybody see the video?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Detective, do you recognize this scene here?
I do, yes.
And what is it?
It appears to be the angle of the Ring video camera from Mr. Brackman's front door.
And does it appear to be a complete and accurate representation of what you were given?
It does, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 10 into evidence.
All right, any objection, Ms. Damiana?
No objection, Your Honor.
The exhibit is admitted. It will be admitted as prosecution's exhibit number 10. Would you like to publish that video?
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to publish this video.
Thank you, Ms. Klausner. Go ahead.
So what does this video show us exactly?
Yeah, so as we'll see if we play the video, we see an intruder, later identified as Miss Avery Becker, attempting to enter Mr. Brackman's residence via his front door, but being unable to do so. The intruder appears to be locked out of the house and doesn't appear to have any sort of keys or way to get into the house, and so we see them fail in their attempt to enter.
Okay, and with that, I am going to go ahead and play the video. Moving on from that, Detective, were you given any other videos? You mentioned other Ring videos.
I wasn't given other videos, but I was able to obtain other Ring videos, yes.
Would you also recognize those if you were to see them today?
I would.
At this time, I'm going to present Exhibit 12.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Detective, what is this video here? Do you recognize it?
I do, yes. It appears to be another video that I was able to obtain from Mr. Brackman's Ring video account.
And is it a true and accurate representation of that video?
It is, yes.
And how is this video different from the first?
It's different, as we'll see. It's a different entrance that is being showcased via this separate camera. Mr. Brackman happened to have 3 different Ring video cameras, and so this one just shows us an angle facing his back door rather than his front.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd now like to admit Exhibit 12 into evidence.
Any objection, Ms. Damiana?
Yes, Your Honor. I have an objection under relevance. I think we've already established that the intruder attempted to enter the home, and I'm not sure we need any more videos illustrating that.
All right, Ms. Klausner, this is a different door on the same home, correct?
It is a different door.
All right, the court will overrule the defense's objection and allow admission of this exhibit number 12 into the prosecution's evidence. Would you like to publish that video?
I would, Your Honor. Thank you.
You may.
And Detective, what is this video? I'm sorry. I would like to play this video first. Yeah. Detective, what can we see in this video?
In this video, we can see that same intruder that we saw in Exhibit 10 attempt to enter Mr. Brackman's home through his back door. And as we just saw, do so successfully. It doesn't appear that the intruder pulls out any keys to enter the door or anything. They just slide the door open and easily access the home through this back door.
So do these videos give you a clear idea if the entrance seemed to be welcomed or forced?
Yeah, the entrance was forced, as we can see from these two videos, not only because the intruder attempts to enter the residence through two different doors, but because, as I've mentioned previously, the intruder doesn't appear to have any keys or anything on them that would allow them access to the house. And so, because of that, this entrance was in fact forceful.
Okay. And were you able to speak to anybody that knew Mr. Brackman personally?
I was, yes, I was able to speak with a couple people, but the first of which was Alex Cifuentes.
Who's Alex Cifuentes?
Alex Cifuentes was a kid on Mr. Brackman's mock trial team. Through my investigation, I came to realize that Mr. Brackman was a coach for the Colorado High School mock trial team. And from that, I contacted Colorado High School and got contact information for some of the kids on the team. And Alex Cifuentes just happened to be the first one of those kids that I contacted.
So what kind of things did you and Alex talk about?
Yeah, Alex and I talked about mock trial, as well as his relationship with another student on the team, Miss Avery Becker, and Miss Becker's relationship with their coach, Mr. Mackenzie Brackman, at least as Alex saw it at practices and competitions.
And what did Alex see at practices and competitions between the two?
Yeah, so Alex explained to me that the two of them clashed a lot. It sounds like Miss Becker was often...
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Viviana.
Under hearsay Rule 801, this witness is testifying to something else that another witness in this case explained to them.
All right, thank you, Ms. Damiana. Ms. Klausner, it does appear that your question is inviting hearsay. Is there an exception that you believe it's allowed under?
Yes, Your Honor. This statement isn't hearsay because it's not being brought in for the truth of the matter, but rather the effect on the listener, which would be Detective Jordan Markowitz.
All right, if that's your intention, then I would ask that you rephrase the question to focus on that effect. The objection will be granted, Ms. Damiana. Ms. Klausner, rephrase your question, please.
And why did you think that the relationship Alex described was important to the investigation?
Yeah, so I deemed it important because, as Alex explained to me, it sounds like the two of them clash frequently. And because I was investigating the death of Mr. Brackman, I thought that this conflict between him and Miss Becker was important to the case. As a police officer, I follow up on all possible leads, and this appeared to be the first lead that I found.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Klausner. The witness is yours, Ms. Damiana.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Detective Markowitz, good morning. Upon your initial investigation into Mackenzie Brackman's death, you found that Brackman was involved as the coach of the CHS mock trial team.
I did, yes.
And at first, you thought it seemed highly unlikely that Brackman's activity with the mock trial team had anything to do with his death.
At first, yes, but as I just explained, as I went deeper in the investigation, that became untrue.
Thank you. And however, thinking this, you investigated this lead and called one of its members, Alex Cifuentes.
Yes, as I mentioned previously, I like to follow up on all possible leads. So as soon as I saw that this lead was apparent, I decided to follow up.
Yes, Detective. Thank you. You did. And Cifuentes was the only member of the mock trial team that you spoke to.
Yes, I attempted to speak with Miss Avery Becker, but soon before my interview with her, I got a call from her lawyer saying that all communications would have to go through her, and so I wasn't able.
Thank you, Detective. I only asked about Cifuentes, but you never spoke with Taylor Perkins.
No, I in fact did not.
Even though Perkins was the defendant's alibi.
Yes, but I felt like I got enough information that I needed from Ms. Cifuentes.
Even though there were 9 other members on the mock trial team?
Yes, but Alex gave me all the information that I needed. I didn't feel the need to investigate or look further into any of the students on the team.
That's interesting, Detective. You talk about following up on all
Objection,
leads.
Your Honor. Attorney testifying. Your Honor, your microphone is muted.
Thank you. I apologize. Ms. Damiana, it was difficult for me to hear when Ms. Klausner came in there. The objection was attorney testifying. Is that right, Ms. Klausner?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Damiana, if you'll repeat your question.
Yes, I asked the detective if they thought that, I asked the detective if one of their initial theories led them to believe that Mr. Brackman could have been murdered by a former client.
Okay, Ms. Klausner, your objection is overruled. I think the question is proper. Go ahead, Ms. Damiana, or excuse me, Detective Markowitz.
Your Honor.
Yes.
May I respond?
Briefly?
I'm not objecting to the question itself. I am just objecting to the counsel's comments between her questions. I heard a couple comments directed at my witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. Klausner. Detective Markowitz, if you can answer Ms. Damiana's questions directly, I think that will eliminate that issue. Ms. Damiana, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Detective, one of your initial theories led you to believe that Mr. Brackman could have been murdered by a former client.
An initial theory, yes.
And you reviewed the evidence in this case, including that found by your colleague, Kyle Kuzak?
Yes, as much as I deem necessary.
And were you aware of a student named Blair Rollins?
I was, yes, but he didn't appear to be a possible lead.
So you never spoke with Blair Rollins?
I didn't know, again, because he didn't appear to be a possible lead.
Even though Blair Rollins disappeared directly following Brackman's murder?
Yes, that didn't make him a possible lead.
And you are aware that the father of Rollins was represented by Brackman in a case. He was a former client.
Absolutely, yes.
And you are aware that Brackman lost that case and Rollins' father was declared guilty.
Yes, but that didn't necessarily make him a possible lead.
And you never checked Blair Rollins' attendance records on the day of the murder?
I did not, no.
You never even tried to find him since the day of the murder?
No, because as I've said previously, I didn't see him as a possible lead, so I didn't think it was necessary.
And you never went to Brackman's office to examine any files of his former clients either?
I did not, but again, it didn't seem that there would be any possible leads there, and so I didn't deem it necessary.
You never got a list of people Brackman represented either?
Once again, no, but the reason behind that is because it didn't appear that any possible leads would come from me looking into that.
All right, thank you, Detective. Now we're going to shift focus and moving into your area of expertise concerning cell phone technology. You are aware that a cell phone will not always connect to the nearest tower?
Yes, but it more often than not connects to the nearest.
But to clarify, so even if a cell phone is far from a tower, it may still connect with it?
It may, but the chances are very, very limited.
Though there is a chance, Detective.
Yeah, in my experience, there's a chance, but once again, that chance is very limited.
So even if Avery Becker's phone was far from a cell tower, there is a possibility her phone could have still connected to that cell tower?
There's always a chance, but there's no necessary proof there.
Now, you concluded that a number of calls were placed by Taylor Perkins on March 6th, is that correct?
Yes.
But you never investigated the call records of Taylor Perkins?
I didn't. I got all the information that I needed from the call detail records that I obtained through Avery's cell phone number.
And shifting focus once again, Detective, you also received screenshots of a text conversation from Alex Cifuentes.
I did, yes.
But you never took out a search warrant for Cifuentes' phone yourself?
I didn't. Alex was a super trustworthy kid, and so I thought that the screenshots that he sent me would be enough evidence.
But you never looked at Cifuentes' phone yourself?
Once again, he was a trustworthy kid. I trusted the screenshots.
You never got his phone records either,
I did not know.
which is something you did do with the defendant Avery Becker's phone.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat your question? I couldn't quite understand you there for a second.
Of course. Phone records is something you did obtain from the defendant Avery Becker's phone. Is that correct?
Yes, not via her phone directly, but via her cell phone number.
So you have the capability.
Absolutely. Like I've explained, I have the certification, the training.
But the only evidence you have of these text messages from Alex Cifuentes' phone are screenshots.
Yes.
Screenshots sent to you by Cifuentes himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Screenshots that do not show the date of the text messages.
No, but Alex and I, in his interview, talked about when these text messages were sent.
And these screenshots do not actually show the phone number that the text came from either.
No, but once again, I trusted Alex, and in the screenshots, I was able to see that he was messaging a contact named Avery. So,
thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. Damiana. Ms. Klausner, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, you say that there's a slim chance a phone can connect to a cell phone tower it's not near.
As you said, very slim.
Very slim. So you trust that the location of Avery's phone shown on the cell phone data records is accurate.
I do, yes.
And you followed all possible leads that you deemed important and necessary.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Detective Markowitz, I believe that concludes your testimony today. Thank you for your participation. We'll move on to the prosecution's next witness. I believe that's being handled by Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson, if we can have you come on video, as well as the defense attorney handling this, which I believe was Mr. Littlewood. Good morning. There you are, Mr. Littlewood. And then the witness as well.
Are the timekeepers ready?
I think we're missing the witness. There we go. All right. Timekeepers, I see a yes there in the chat. All right. And then just help clarify for me here, folks. I'm watching those minutes tick down there. Is the timekeeper going to pop on if we reach a time limit and notify the parties?
Your Honor, would you like me to?
That would be great. Just because of the virtual format, I think that would be very helpful. So if we reach a time limit, please notify the court verbally.
Okay, when we reach 5 minutes, I'll notify the court. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Thompson, you may go ahead with your witness. I see you're on mute.
Sorry
There
about
we go.
that. Yes, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties.
No problem.
Please,
We can hear you now.
sorry.
Go
Please
ahead,
state your name, spelling your last for the record.
My name is Kyle Kuzak, and Kuzak is spelled K-U-Z-A-K.
Ms. Kuzak, what line of work are you in?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
What does it mean to be a crime scene reconstruction investigator?
I investigate complex crime scenes and try and figure out what might have happened at them. And I work closely with the police force in doing that.
How long have you been in this line of work?
I've been doing crime scene reconstruction for 19 years. The last 3 I've spent with the City of Denver Police Department.
Are you considered a police officer?
No, I'm a civilian employee.
How do you get your cases?
Well, the police department just tells me whether or not they need my help on certain cases. If they come across a crime scene that they might need help on, I am more than willing to help them there.
Have you attended any conferences for crime scene reconstruction?
Yeah, I've attended multiple conferences and I'm certified with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Your Honor, I now move to admit Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
All right, Mr. Littlewood, any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to voir dire.
You may. And I'm having a little trouble with your volume, Mr. Littlewood, so if you could just speak up for me.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you.
Ms. Kuzak, you are not a police officer, is that correct?
Yeah, no, I'm not.
So you haven't been through the basic training that all police officers go through?
No, I'm not a police officer.
Or the same training that a police investigator might go through?
No.
Your Honor, I have no problem with the witness's qualification as an expert in this field, but I'd like the jury to consider that Ms. Kuzak is not a police officer, nor does she have the same training as a police officer when considering the weight of the witness's testimony.
All right, Mr. Littlewood, with no objection from the defense, the prosecution move forward, allowing Ms. Kuzak's expert testimony.
Ms. Kuzak, were you an investigator on the murder of Mackenzie Brockman?
Yeah, I was.
What did you visit the crime scene?
Yeah, I did. I went after other members of the crime lab had already investigated.
And what did you do when you got there?
Well, I looked around and I started kind of planning out how my investigation was going to look. Trying to look for any hard evidence I might use, that kind of thing.
Do you have any steps that you use when you go to a crime scene or start an investigation?
Yeah, well, I go into every investigation with my 2 key principles. I like to assume every case is going to trial, so I try and make the evidence, easy to access, that kind of thing. And then my second would be to conduct an investigation with the mindset of future reconstruction, just to make it easier if any new evidence pops up, any new suspects.
And do you have any other steps that you follow?
Yeah, I have a 5-step process that I use.
Can you tell me a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so my first step is recognition and documentation. This is when I complete my witness tracking spreadsheets, my evidence tracking spreadsheets, a flow chart, kind of the whole deal there. My second step is collection of evidence. My third is evaluation of evidence, and those are pretty self-explanatory, I think. My fourth step is hypothesis and testing. I think of possible ways that what could have happened on that day. And then my fifth step is my final reconstruction conclusion.
Have you used this process in other cases that you've been involved with?
Yeah, most definitely. I've taken a long time to perfect it, but yeah, for the last few years, I've been using it.
And has it proven to be successful?
I think so, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the techniques that you use. Did you make any charts or any documentation during this investigation?
Yeah, like I said, I created witness tracking spreadsheets, evidence tracking sheets, and a flow chart for this investigation.
Would you recognize a copy of that flow chart if presented to you?
Yes, most definitely.
Your Honor, let the record reflect. I'm showing opposing counsel what has been previously marked as Exhibit 17, and it should be screen shared in one moment. I'm sorry about the wait.
No problem.
And can you go ahead and turn to the last page of Exhibit 17? Oh, sorry, I think it's one more page down. Can you tell me what's, do you recognize what I placed in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of the flowchart you made?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I now move to admit Exhibit 17 into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Littlewood?
Yes, Your Honor, I would object on the grounds of hearsay.
Your Honor,
All
may I
right.
respond?
Yes, please.
Your Honor, this is allowed because it's a regularly conducted business activity. As Ms. Kuzak has explained, she's made other flowcharts and used this process in her previous cases. So again, this is a regularly conducted business activity.
All right, let me take a look, just one moment. The objection will be overruled. The exhibit is admitted. This will be labeled as prosecution's exhibit number 12. Is that correct?
It's number 17.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble seeing the font. Number 17. You may move forward.
Thank you. What's prominent about this flowchart?
Objection, Your Honor. This is cumulative evidence. The admitted exhibits are supposed to speak for themselves.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
This is not cumulative because, as Ms. Kuzak has been qualified as an expert, she's merely explaining to the jury to give them a better understanding of what's really important about this exhibit and how she used it to come up with her conclusion.
All right, I'll allow it at this time, Mr. Littlewood. If you feel like we get to that point again, please feel free to object. Go forward.
Can you tell me what's prominent about this flowchart?
Yeah, so it's 4 columns, just kind of try and explain the timeline of what happened on the day of March 6th of last year at the home of Mackenzie Brackman. It's really just my overall explanation of what I think happened.
And what do you think happened on March 6, 2020?
Well,
I believe that the witness has properly explained that this document explains what they believe happened on the day of the murder. And now this truly would be cumulative since this document should speak for itself.
All right, thank you, Mr. Littlewood. Ms. Thompson, if you'll ask your questions with specificity in regards to what you are discussing on the document, go ahead.
On the day of March 6, 2020, what do you think happened when the intruder entered the house?
Well, I believe Mr. Brackman was either alerted by his back door being opened or the Ring app, however that works. But I believe the victim then was scared and proceeded to grab a knife off of his kitchen counter out of the knife block.
Objection, Your Honor. Once again, they have simply asked the same question again. I have the same cumulative objection to this question.
May I respond, Your Honor? Oh, sorry.
All right, Ms. Thompson.
This is not cumulative because this flowchart does not have all the information. And we no longer need it up, so I can stop screen sharing that. But Ms. Kuzak is merely explaining with the investigation that she did, with her 5-step process, with her 2 principles, how she believed this murder occurred, and not all of the information will be shown in the flowchart. So she's merely explaining how she came to her conclusion with information in the flowchart as well as not in the flowchart.
All right, I will overrule the objection and allow the testimony. Mr. Littlewood, those are certainly things you can address on cross. Go ahead, Ms. Thompson.
On March 6, 2020, what do you think happened when the intruder entered the house?
Well, like I said, Mr. Brackman was alerted somehow and grabbed a knife off of his kitchen counter. I then believe that the intruder and the victim had some kind of a struggle about the house. But ultimately, I believe there was some kind of bear hugging motion. The victim was able to get the intruder into kind of a bear hug, but the intruder somehow broke loose and then ended up stabbing Mr. Brackman in the back.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Mr. Littlewood, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to start with some questions about the security camera footage. You are aware that push notifications can be turned off in the Ring app?
I guess I don't really specialize in that area, but from what I've heard, yeah.
And you did not obtain records from Ring to see if the victim had disabled push notifications?
No, that's not really my job.
You did not do that?
No. Why would I?
You assumed that the victim had them enabled?
I'm sorry?
You just assumed that the victim did have them enabled?
No, I tried to create kind of the 2 possibilities.
Let me get this straight.
I'm sorry?
You did not obtain records from Ring to verify whether the victim did or did not have them enabled. But when developing your case, you assumed that he had them enabled, correct?
No.
Yet your theory of the case is that the victim was alerted to the intruder's presence by the Ring app.
Either that or the intruder opening their back door. Either is a possibility.
And you reviewed Blake Van Owen's report for this case.
Yeah, I did.
So you were aware of Blair Rowland's involvement as a possible suspect.
Yeah, she was, or they were considered as a suspect, but they were ruled out.
In fact, early in your investigation, you regarded Blair Rowlands as a suspect as well.
Yeah, I did, along with Alex Cifuentes.
And you learned that the victim in this case represented Blair Rowland's father in a separate case.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Where their father was on trial for murder.
Mm-hmm, yep.
And through the course of that trial, he was sentenced to life in prison.
Something like that, yeah.
And you never checked Blair's attendance records for the day of the murder.
Like I said, that's not really my job. I'm simply here to do crime scene reconstruction.
That's a no.
Yeah, no, why would I?
And you never tried to find him or conduct an interview with him.
Again, not my job.
Yet you did conduct other interviews for this investigation.
I personally didn't interview anyone. I looked at the police reports and their interviews of it. But no, not me personally.
And despite knowing all of these things, you never conducted any investigations whatsoever into Blair Rowlands.
Again, I'm sorry, it's not my job.
You also used a flowchart, as previously mentioned, to keep track of case details for this case.
Yeah, I did.
And the details shown in this flowchart are details you learned from an interview with Detective Markowitz.
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Could you re-ask that?
The details in this flowchart are details you learned through an interview with Detective Markowitz.
Partially, yeah.
Now, moving on to some of the material evidence, it is your opinion that the knife the victim was stabbed with came from the knife block in the kitchen.
Well, I believe the victim opened a knife drawer to look for a knife, but then decided to go for the larger chef's knife that was in his knife block. Yeah.
And this knife had a silver blade and handle cast from the same piece of metal.
Yes.
And the knives in the knife block all have black plastic handles.
Yeah, I did notice that.
And upon further inspection of the knife used as the murder weapon, you discovered it was a Chicago cutlery knife.
Objection, Your Honor. Facts not in evidence. We've not been presented with pictures of the knives or what's being talked about right now.
Your Honor,
Mr. Littlewood?
If I may respond, Your Honor.
You may.
This question has nothing to do with any of the exhibits themselves. This is specifically referenced within the witness's witness statement. Therefore, it would not be facts not in evidence.
All right, Ms. Thompson, I will overrule your objection. I do believe Mr. Littlewood is just asking about Ms. Kuzak's personal knowledge. So you may continue, Mr. Littlewood.
I'll ask the question again. And upon further inspection of the knife used as the murder weapon, you discovered it was a Chicago cutlery knife.
Yeah, I did.
Meanwhile, the knives in the knife block were from a J.A. Henkel's knife set.
Something like that, I think, yeah.
So the murder weapon was a different color than the knives in the knife block.
I mean, it was made out of metal.
And a different style as well.
I'm not really an expert on knife styles, but yeah, from what I noticed, they were different.
And it was a different brand.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Littlewood. Ms. Thompson, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief one.
Go for it.
Ms. Kuzak, is it your job to perform interviews?
No.
Is it your job to look into other witnesses?
No, I'm simply here to do crime scene reconstruction.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Thank you, Ms. Kuzak, for your testimony today. I believe you are excused at this point in time. It looks like in the chat here, we're having a bit of a discrepancy between the timekeepers. If timekeepers from both sides want to pop on real quick, and we can make sure that we're all on the same page here.
I have 6 minutes and 3 seconds left for direct and 6 minutes and 9 seconds left for cross.
All right, that was from the Sonic team. Minecraft.
So my Wi-Fi went out and I missed like the entire first portion of the meeting. So my times were based on coordinating with her. And
okay, all right. Then Sonic, if you can go ahead and repeat those times, and we'll just adopt those as the official remaining times.
Yeah, I have 6 minutes and 3 seconds left for direct, and then 6 minutes and 9 seconds left for cross.
Okay. Did you get that, Ms. Fabian?
Could you please repeat that?
6 minutes and 3 seconds for direct, and 6 minutes and 9 seconds for cross.
Thank you.
Remaining. All right, everyone all set there? We can move on to the third witness. I believe Ms. Chamberlain is handling this witness on behalf of the prosecution, and then Mr. McKinney is examining the witness on behalf of the defense. And then we've got our witness there as well. All right. Timekeepers, are you ready? Ms. Chamberlain, your witness.
Could I ask for a brief time check?
Yes.
Yes, 6 minutes and 3 seconds left for direct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, Ms.
May I
Chamberlain,
proceed?
You may.
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
My name is Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
And Ms. Cifuentes, are you currently enrolled in school?
Yes, I'm a senior at Colorado High School.
And do you do any extracurriculars?
Yes, I'm on the mock trial team.
And do you know anyone on the mock trial team?
Yeah, my friend Avery Becker is on the team, as well as Taylor Perkins.
And could you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Avery Becker?
Yeah, Avery and I were pretty good friends at mock trial. Avery was actually the one who told me about mock trial.
And from what you observed being on the team, how did Avery and Mr. Brackman act towards each other?
From what I saw, they definitely didn't always get along, and they had some conflict.
And were there any large conflicts you can think of?
I think the largest conflict was the practice after our regional competition.
And could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, at the regional competition, Avery had won the Best Closing and Best Attorney award. And at the practice after that, Mr. Brackman basically told Avery that they did not deserve the awards that they received at the competition. And that angered Avery, and Avery walked out of practice and wrote Worst Attorney Award on Mr. Brackman's car.
And do you know if there were any consequences for this?
Mr. Brackman kicked Avery off the team.
And do you know if Avery reached out to anyone after this?
Yeah, Avery, I apologize, texted me after this incident.
Would you recognize a copy of these text messages if you saw them here today?
Yes.
Your Honor, I am now screen sharing the text messages.
What exhibit number is that?
Exhibit 14.
All right. And are you intending to admit these?
Yes, Your Honor. All right.
Mr. McKinney, in regards to admission of this exhibit, do you have an objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I am objecting on the grounds of inadmissible evidence of Rule 101.003, admission of duplicates. I can elaborate.
All right, and I might have gone out of order here, Mr. McKinney. Ms. Chamberlain, why don't you lay some more foundation for this exhibit, and then Mr. McKinney, that objection may or may not be well-founded. We'll come right back to that. Ms. Chamberlain.
Do you recognize these?
Yes, I do.
What are they?
This is the text conversation between me and Avery.
And do they seem to be a true and accurate copy?
Yes.
Your Honor, I now move to admit what has been previously marked as Exhibit 14 into evidence.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Mr. McKinney, the basis of your objection.
Yes, this actually does not relate to the foundation of the evidence, but more of the content of the evidence. Under Rule 1003, I can object based on a relevant question raised about the admissibility of this evidence. As seen in these images, there's no time stamps to identify times when they were sent. There's no phone number to identify who they were sent by. The only identification note is under Avery Becker. I also object under grounds of hearsay, as this is just a text conversation between two people and the identity is not confirmed.
All right, thank you, Mr. McKinney. Ms. Chamberlain, if you can refer first to your basis in regards to the admissibility of a duplicate.
Under Rule 1004, subsections 1 and 2, the original has been lost and there's no evidence of it being in bad faith. This is also against the defense, and these same text messages would be on Avery Becker's phone that is claimed to be lost and the defense would have control of.
All right, Mr. McKinney, anything in regards to that?
Despite the original being lost, the question isn't, it's only admissible because the original is lost. It's inadmissible because the content is inaccurate and does not show any identifying information. It's not about there's no other option. It's just this is not admissible under the grounds of the Rule 10003.
All right, Ms. Chamberlain, can you give me some explanation here about the original's authenticity?
Could I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
Sure.
Your Honor, I also forgot to elaborate on the grounds of hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement as well.
We'll get to that in just a moment, Mr. McKinney. Hang on for me.
I apologize, Your Honor.
We don't have to deal with that if the exhibit's not admitted, so hold on just one moment. And I know the students are not allowed to be seated together, so I'm going to give Ms. Chamberlain just another minute here, and then we'll need to move forward.
Could I have the defense repeat their objection?
My understanding, Ms. Chamberlain, here is that he's concerned about the issues of authenticity because there are no timestamps or identifying information on the exhibit.
Although there are no timestamps, there's no proof that it has been in bad faith, and there's no evidence that it has been in bad faith. And the phone has been lost.
All right. Under Rule 1003, it states a duplicate is admissible to the same extent as the original, unless a genuine question is raised about the original's authenticity or the circumstances make it unfair to admit the duplicate. The defense's objection here is well reasoned that there's no identifying information on this exhibit, as well as no timestamps, which do create a genuine issue about the authenticity. I will sustain the defense's objection. I will not admit this exhibit at this time. Ms. Chamberlain, you may continue.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Mr. McKinney.
Mr. Cifuentes, Mrs. Cifuentes, sorry, my bad. All right. You were pretty close with Avery Becker, as you said.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time together at mock trial.
Man, you'd even say you were best friends.
Practically.
And despite this, Avery had a lackadaisical attitude towards mock trial in your eyes.
Yeah, somewhat.
You even asked why Coach Brackman even put up with her.
Yeah, I could tell that it was very frustrating for Mr. Brackman, and so I was curious as to why.
And after a dispute between Brackman and Avery, Avery did write on the car of Brackman's car, his Porsche.
Yes.
And did Brackman want to press charges of vandalism against her?
Not that I believe.
And but you did. You wanted Brackman to push charges against her.
I just thought that it was a very large thing that had happened, and I thought that his reaction was just not the reaction that I would have had to that situation.
And after she was kicked off, your best friend reached out to you, trying to getting help to get back on the team.
Correct.
But you didn't want her back.
I was willing to ask if Coach Brackman wanted Avery back on the team.
But you were basically best friends with Avery Becker.
Mock trial best friends, correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Ms. Chamberlain, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Cifuentes, for your testimony today. Does that conclude the prosecution's presentation of evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but there are no defense witnesses?
There are 3 defense witnesses, Your Honor.
Okay, I apologize. I think when I wrote my list down, I clumped them together, so I apologize about that. Mr. Littlewood, are you handling the first defense witness?
No, Your Honor.
All right, who's handling that?
That would be me, Your Honor.
Great, is that Ms. Damiana?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and Ms. Chamberlain, I see you there. Are you handling that witness on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, if this is Avery Becker.
Okay, it looks like it is. All right. And are the timekeepers ready? Are we set on our times there?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Damiana, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And good afternoon, Ms. Becker. Would you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Avery Becker. Becker is spelled B-E-C-K-E-R.
Fantastic. And how old are you, Ms. Becker?
I'm 18. I just graduated from Colorado High School last year.
And did you know the late Mackenzie Brackman?
Yeah, I did. Mr. Brackman was my mock trial coach during my time at Colorado High School.
And how long were you on the mock trial team there?
I was on that team for all 4 years of high school.
Could you elaborate briefly on why you joined the mock trial team in the first place?
Well, I originally joined to hang out with my friend Taylor Perkins and play on our phones at practice, but over time I developed a real passion for the activity.
And from your own perspective, Ms. Becker, what did your relationship look like with the late Coach Brackman?
Well, Mr. Brackman and I had a lot of conflict. We got into a lot of arguments at practice. We disagreed on a lot of things. Brackman thought that I needed to prepare more for mock trial, and I believed that, I was talented enough that I could perform improvisationally and on the spot.
And despite these arguments, were you proud of your accomplishments on the team?
Yeah, I was really proud. I thought that we had a really good team.
Were you ever demoted to the B team?
Yeah, unfortunately. So shortly before the regional competition last year, I showed up at practice and Brackman and I disagreed on how prepared I was. And we got into a bit of an argument and he demoted me from the A team, which was the top team, to the B team, which was sort of a lower level team. And that was pretty upsetting.
And did you ever regain your position on the A team?
Yeah, I did, actually. So my friend Taylor offered to leave the A team so that I could rejoin, or to sort of make Brackman have me rejoin. And we did that. And so I did end up rejoining the A team before regionals.
Were you proud of how you performed at the regional tournament on the A team?
Oh, certainly. I was very proud. I thought that the team did very well, and I won some awards that I was very proud of.
But how were you received by Brackman and the rest of your team following the tournament?
Well, Brackman was upset with me. He believed that I had improvised and deviated from his script, and so we had a pretty big argument at the practice right after regionals.
And could you elaborate on what you did in response to that argument?
Well, we had an argument in practice, and I stormed out in anger and humiliation, and made the extremely unfortunate misguided decision to write on the hood of his car with what I thought at the time was a dry erase marker.
And again, from your own perspective, Ms. Becker, how did Brackman respond to you doing that?
Well, I mean, he came out, he followed me out of practice and was reasonably angry when he noticed what I had done to his car. At the time, I was pretty mad, and he kicked me off the team permanently. But after cooling down, I sort of realized the error in my ways.
And did you ever go to apologize to Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, so even though I was mad at first and, wanted to get back on the team, I realized after that evening that it would be really important for me to apologize to him and see what I could do.
And how were you received when you went to apologize to him?
So I went to his office to try to apologize, but his secretary refused to let me in. And so I couldn't apologize in person.
Did you give up after that?
Oh, of course not. I immediately sent a text message apologizing and offering to pay for the damage.
Did Mr. Brackman ever respond to that text message?
Unfortunately, no, he did not respond before he was killed.
And at the time of Coach Brackman's death, did you still feel guilty about what you did to his car?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was an extremely misguided decision.
And briefly, Ms. Becker, what happened on March 5th, the day before Mr. Brackman's murder?
Taylor Perkins and I were hanging out at the Fry Shack in the mall in the afternoon, and we at some point during that evening, I later discovered, lost my phone. But we just sort of hung out in those two locations that evening.
Were you ever able to retrieve your phone?
Unfortunately, I was not able to retrieve my phone despite looking for it most of the afternoon of March 6th. We were never able to find it.
Are you aware of any calls that were made to that phone on that day?
Oh, of course, Taylor called it a bunch of times when we were at the mall to try and see if we could hear the noise it made. So of course, there were a bunch of calls placed by Taylor to my phone that day.
And just to clarify, you spent the entire day looking for your phone?
Yeah.
Was Taylor with you the entirety of that time?
Yeah, we were trying to search together. 2 pairs of eyes are better than 1.
And in the course of those events, did you ever intend to go near Brackman's house?
No, I mean, I didn't lose my phone at Brackman's house, so it wouldn't make much sense to look there. So no, we did not go to Brackman's house for any reason that day.
All right, thank you. And switching topics, would you consider yourself close to Alex Cifuentes?
No, not really. I mean, she was on the mock trial team, but not really one of my close friends.
And would you have sent any text messages to Alex Cifuentes asking for a favor?
Alex would be the last person I would ask for help with favors.
And why is that, Ms. Becker?
We were never particularly close. We didn't know each other very well. And, you know, I didn't always have a great relationship with Alex.
And Ms. Becker, after the unfortunate incident with the car, did you plan any other retaliatory acts against Brackman?
Of course not. I was trying to apologize for having messed up his car, and so it wouldn't make sense to retaliate in any other way.
Were you responsible then for the murder of Mackenzie Brackman on March 6, 2020?
Of course not. I mean, that would be horrible. No.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness.
Thank you, Ms. Damiana. Ms. Chamberlain, your witness.
Miss Becker, you were really good at mock trial, correct?
I would say so.
You could say you were a natural.
I mean, you could say that, yeah.
I mean, you won some pretty prestigious awards for mock trial.
Yeah, I did.
But not everyone appreciated this talent.
Well, unfortunately, no.
Your own coach didn't appreciate this talent.
I mean, that's why we got into arguments.
He even demoted you to B team because he thought you didn't work hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, I really disagreed with him on that issue.
Objection, Your Honor. This question asks for the witness to speculate on the feelings of Mr. Brackman.
Ms. Chamberlain, restate the question for me.
Okay.
I just didn't hear the question. Can you restate it, please?
Yeah. He even devoted you to B team.
Ms. Damiana, your objection is what?
My objection was actually to the previous question. Sorry, my microphone wasn't working. I believe that the opposing counsel asked towards the feelings that surrounded that argument.
All right, that testimony is already in the record, so unfortunately we'll move forward. Ms. Chamberlain, go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat my question?
That's all right, go ahead.
Okay. But your best friend Taylor quit A team for you.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor was never particularly enthused about mock trial to begin with, and so it seemed like a reasonable decision to both of us.
And she would do anything for you.
I mean, you could say that, I guess. Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about the practice after regionals. You walked into practice with your head held pretty high.
I felt like I had a reason to be proud of my accomplishments at the regional tournament.
And you were expecting some appreciation from your coach, your team.
I mean, I at least expected Brackman to acknowledge that I had done a good job.
But instead, he humiliated you in front of your team.
Well, we got into an argument over the awards that I had won, and that, I think, made both of us feel pretty bad.
And you stormed out of practice.
Yeah, I was very angry.
You stormed out with that permanent marker in your hand.
I believed it was a dry erase marker at the time.
But it was permanent.
Yes, as I discovered later.
And you stormed out of the building.
I mean, yeah, you could characterize it that way. Both of us were pretty angry about the argument we had just gotten into.
And you went up to his Porsche.
Yeah, I really unfortunately chose to do that.
And you wrote Worst Attorney Award on the hood of his car.
As I have said, that is a unfortunate decision that I did make.
You wrote all 3 words?
I believe I have testified to having written all 3 words, and I feel bad about that.
And after being kicked off the team, you ran home.
I drove home. Brackman and I got into another argument in the parking lot, and I chose to go home at that point.
And you told your mom everything.
Well, I told my mother that Brackman had yelled at me for no reason, which is a lie that I regret having told now. And spent the evening trying to cool off from the argument. So I didn't tell her everything precisely.
And the next morning, you went to Mr. Brackman's office to apologize?
Of course. I mean, I wanted to get back on the mock trial team and repair the damage that I had caused to his car.
But he refused to speak to you.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. I still wish that I had gotten to apologize that day. It continues to make me really upset that I never got a chance to make amends with him before he was killed.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the evening of March 5th. You went to Fry Shack with your best friend Taylor Perkins, correct?
We hung out at the Fry Shack for a while, and then we went to the mall after that.
And you saw Alex Cifuentes there?
Yeah, we did.
And Alex Cifuentes made you kind of angry that night, made you kind of upset, right?
I mean, vaguely, I suppose. We played games on my phone for a while, which was slightly frustrating, and then Taylor and I took off to the mall later.
Objection, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Damiana.
This is irrelevant character evidence. It seems that the opposing counsel is using the witness's what the witness said to suggest her behavior, but she's suggesting that on another occasion, Avery might act in accordance with that same behavior.
All right, Ms. Chamberlain, your response.
Your Honor, I'm just merely trying to see where Avery Becker was on the night of March 5th and where she, what she was doing. So it does relate to the case and it is relevant. And relevance is a very low bar, Your Honor.
Okay, why don't you rephrase the question to that end? Go ahead, Ms. Chamberlain.
All right. Ms. Becker, you saw Alex Fuentes that night, correct?
Yeah, I did. We met at the Fry Shack.
And after being there for a bit, you left the Fry Shack, correct?
Yeah, Taylor and I did leave the Fry Shack.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the morning of March 6th.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't find your phone that morning.
No, I couldn't.
You and Taylor spent the whole day looking for it.
Pretty much, yeah. It was a bit of a boring day.
You went to Fry Shack.
Yeah.
Went to the mall.
Yeah, those were both the places we had been, so I figured it was reasonable to check there.
And nowhere to be found.
Nope.
And let's talk a little bit more about your relationship with Mr. Brackman. When he kicked you off the team, it made you pretty angry.
I was initially pretty angry that he kicked me off the team. Yep.
And when he humiliated you in front of your team, it made you pretty angry.
I mean, I had been proud of my accomplishments in in mock trial, and so it was pretty frustrating to have that argument with him.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh,
Okay, I think we got someone else was popping on there perhaps. Ms. Chamberlain, are you finished with your questions?
Yeah.
Okay. And did we have someone else speaking in? All right, I'll go back to Ms. Damiana for your redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Becker, would you call your relationship with Mackenzie Brackman violent?
No, I mean, we had arguments about mock trial, and, you know, violence over mock trial would be pretty unreasonable, I think.
And after the incident involving his car, how long did you take to realize the fault of your actions?
A couple of hours. I mean, that evening, I decided that I needed to go to his office to apologize the next day.
Were you still guilty? Did you still feel guilty about this incident on March 6th?
I mean, I still feel guilty about having written on his car. I think it was a really poor decision, and I regret having done it. Especially so.
And would you therefore, sorry, Ms. Becker, would you have therefore wanted to further strain that relationship by carrying out any other retaliatory acts?
Of course not. That would be a terrible idea.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Becker. Defense next witness.
The defense would, call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Who do we have from the prosecution? They might be shuffling around chairs, so we'll give them just one moment. Do we have an attorney from Team Sonic?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just had to move real quick. I'm here now.
And it's Miss Klausner, correct?
Yes, I'm working on changing my name right now.
No problem. Timekeepers, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. McKinney, please present your witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Perkins. Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Hi there. My name is Taylor Perkins, with my last name being spelled Perkins.
Wonderful, Mr. Perkins. How old are you?
Right now I am 19 years old.
And where did you go to high school?
Well, last year I graduated from Colorado High School, or just CHS for short.
And what is your relationship with Avery Becker?
Oh, Avery? Avery and I are best friends. I mean, you could even say besties. We spend a lot of our time together.
And how long have you been best friends?
Oh, Avery and I have been best friends for almost as long as I can remember. For definitely a really long time.
And were you in mock trial with Avery?
Yes, funnily enough, it was actually Avery's idea that I should start mock trial. We began our freshman year and we would go through the majority of our senior years.
And besides mock trial, did you hang out with Avery a lot inside and outside of school?
Oh, you bet. We spent almost all of our time together, whether it was carpooling to school, our classes together, even the boring ones. We would hang out with during mock trial and even hang out outside of school too. We were together a lot.
And speaking of mock trial, how was Avery as a member of mock trial?
Well, as an attorney, Avery was incredible. I mean, you just had to see it to believe it. But as a member, she could sometimes show up a little underprepared at times.
And how did Coach Brackman, in your view, react to this unpreparedness?
Whenever Avery was unprepared, Brackman would always blow a fuse. He was always yelling at Avery and always shouting.
And was Avery ever demoted for this unprepared behavior?
Yes. Unfortunately, one of the days when Avery showed up to practice, it was the least prepared I think I've ever seen her. I mean, it was pretty bad. Brackman decided it was just best to demote her to B team for her actions.
And what did you do after this?
Well, it was a tough decision. I mean, it took me 3 weeks to think about it, but I eventually stepped down from A team to B team. I thought it would be best for the team if Avery was back up there. I mean, she performs really well in competition.
Unpreparedness seems to be one concern for Coach Brackman, but how was Avery and Brackman's relationship from your point of view as a whole?
I mean, the relationship was always fairly negative. Once again, Brackman would always shout at Avery whenever she was making mistakes or being unprepared or even just late to practice, and it sometimes would bother Avery.
Did this strenuous relationship ever result in anything serious?
Unfortunately, it did. One day after practice, this was after the regional tournament, Brackman was absolutely grilling Avery for her performance. And even though she won 2 awards, she told me that he was just being really heated with her. So she eventually stormed out and wrote Worst Attorney Award on his card.
And what was Avery's reaction to this scuffle, in your view?
Well, afterwards, Avery was extremely apologetic. I mean, she was visibly worried. She's the type of person that always wants to make things right with people.
And going on to the night before Brackman's murder, what were you two doing?
Well, Avery was in a really big slump, so I thought it would be best if we decided to go out, maybe get rid of some of that stress that she was carrying. So after school, we decided to go to Fry Shack, one of our favorite places to eat at the mall. And was anyone else there at the Fry Shack? Yes, a little bit later in the day, people from the mock trial team started to show up, and Alex Cifuentes was there. Alex Cifuentes was commenting about how Avery was kicked off the team in this totally insincere and passive-aggressive way. It made her pretty upset, so she ended up storming off.
And moving on to the day of the murder, the next day, March 6th, what were you doing?
Well, on March 6th, I began my morning by trying to text Avery. You see, like I said earlier, we tend to carpool trying to go to school, spending even more time together, but Avery just wasn't picking up. So when Avery finally got in my house, she said that she had lost her phone. So we decided to go skip class and go look for it.
And where was the last place you saw the phone?
Well, remember when I said that Avery stormed off? She was so upset that she actually left her phone behind on the table, which was pretty surprising to me because that thing's practically her third kidney. But she left it on the table in front of Alex Cifuentes.
And this is at the Fry Shack the night before?
Yes, it was.
And so you mentioned, so where did you look for the phone?
Well, we began just by looking all over. We visited all the locations that we'd been the previous day and eventually ended up going to the mall, which is where I remembered that Cifuentes was the last person I saw near the phone.
And how did you look for the phone?
Well, we started by calling it. We thought that maybe if the phone was in one of the places we were at, maybe we'd be able to hear the ringtone. And maybe if we didn't ever hear it, somebody would pick up and tell us that they'd found the phone.
And was calling the only way to find the phone?
At the time, we thought it was the only way to find the phone, but in hindsight, we realized that we could have used the iPhone tracking website. I guess I never thought about it because I have an Android, and she was in such a frazzle over losing her phone, she never thought about it either.
So, on the day of Brackman's murder, March 6th, you were with Avery all day?
Yeah, we were looking all over town to try to find her phone.
And Avery never left for a period of time?
No, she was my ride there. So we carpooled to school. If she left me, I would be stranded out in the wild.
And you went to the mall, the Fry Shack, but did you ever go to Coach Brackman's house?
No, never. We just looked around places at the mall, like I said earlier.
Was there even a reason to go to Brackman's house?
Not that we ever thought of. I mean, there was no reason for us to even have a suspicion that the phone would be at Brackman's house.
So is it at all possible that Avery killed Coach Brackman?
No, I can say with 100% certainty that Avery never killed Brackman.
And she was with you all day again?
All day. Mm-hmm. All day.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You are. Yeah, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Ms. Klausner, you may cross.
Good afternoon, Mr. Perkins.
Good afternoon.
You went to Colorado High School, didn't you?
For all 4 years of my high school career, that is correct.
And you attended school with Avery Becker?
Yeah, we shared a lot of our classes together. Yeah.
And you two were on the mock trial team together?
Yes, as it would turn out, we spent a lot of time together in mock trial too.
You would say that Avery was pretty skilled at mock trial, wouldn't you?
Oh, you had to see it. She had this way of just thinking on her feet that was almost unbelievable. It was incredible to watch.
But not everybody seemed to share this viewpoint.
No, not everybody.
Your coach constantly told Avery that she didn't prepare enough for mock trial.
Whenever she would deviate from what he thought was the correct script, he'd always get upset with her because he just assumed that she was unprepared. Yeah.
And one day, he began to think she was so underprepared that he demoted her from the A team.
That is what
Objection.
happened.
This calls for speculation on the thoughts of Coach Brackman, which Taylor Perkins does not possess.
All right, thank you, Mr. McKinney. Ms. Klausner, your response to the speculation objection.
Yeah, so I can rephrase the question.
All right, go ahead.
One day, Avery's underpreparedness caused her to be demoted from the A team.
That's what it seemed like to me. Brackman got really upset with her, yeah.
But you stepped down from the mock trial team.
I mean, of course. I mean, I even made bets that state competition, they wouldn't be able to win without Avery.
Yeah, so you stepped down so that Avery could take your place.
Well, for the team, yeah.
And then that worked. Avery was back on the team.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think state competition got canceled anyways, so it didn't even matter in the end.
Yeah, regional competitions came up soon, and Avery won a couple awards.
That's correct. She told me that she won both the best closing as well as the best attorney award. I'm sad I missed it.
And you were really proud of Avery.
Oh, she's like the shooting star in my life. I'm really glad to have met Avery.
But Mr. Brackman didn't seem to be so proud from what you observed.
Well, unfortunately, I was already off the team. I never observed anything Brackman did.
From what you heard later, Mr. Brackman didn't seem to be proud of Avery's awards.
Objection. This calls for hearsay.
Ms. Klausner?
This isn't hearsay because it can be classified as present sense impression. Mr. Brackman made the decision to talk to Avery how he did and the current moment, and that resulted in the conversation that pursued.
All right, why don't you rephrase the question and ask again?
Okay. You later found out that Avery was kicked off the mock trial team.
Yeah, Avery told me that Brackman made the decision just kick her off eventually.
But you suggested that she text the team to get back on?
I mean, definitely. Mock trial was Avery's life. She really wanted to get back on the team, and she wanted to make amends with Brackman.
And you claimed that Avery did text the rest of the team.
Well, yeah, she really wanted the team to she really wanted the team to notify Brackman that she was apologetic.
Would you be surprised to know that Avery claims she didn't text the rest of the team?
I would actually be extremely surprised. She was always the type of person to make amends and to make things right.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Klausner. Mr. McKinney, do you have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins, when you stepped down for Avery to be reinstated into the A team, did you do it for the team or did you do it for Avery?
Oh, I definitely did it for the team, but Avery was definitely a factor in my decision. It was really hard seeing her so miserable, and I knew the team would have no chance without her, so I made the decision to step down.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. I believe you are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Defense's final witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Van Owen. Mr. Littlewood, you'll be handling this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And then do we have an attorney from the prosecution?
And before we begin, may I request how much time is remaining for direct?
Yes, we'll clear that up before we begin here. Thank you, Mr. Littlewood.
Thank you, Your Honor.
For direct, there's 9 minutes remaining.
All right. Looks like Ms. Thompson. Will you be handling this witness on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Timekeepers, it sounds like we have 9 minutes left on direct. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And we may have had 2 people talking at once there. I heard the Sonic team agree that it's 9 minutes. Minecraft team, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Littlewood, go ahead with your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you please state your full name and spell the last for the record?
My name is Blake Van Owen, Vanowen.
And would you tell the jury your connection to this case?
Yes, I've been consulted today by the defense to examine certain aspects of the case from the perspective of a private investigator.
How did your career in law enforcement begin?
I started as a police officer for the Aurora Police Department.
And why did you decide to leave the Aurora Police Department?
I had a certain incident with a detainee that rather soured me on the department, and thus I moved out of the department to a wide range of jobs.
Were you fully cleared of any wrongdoing from that incident?
I was, yes.
How did that incident influence your career path?
Well, for one, it showed me the flaws within the Aurora Police Department, and as such, rather set me on a mission, with the one silver lining of that incident being me finding a path to incriminate and find issues within the department.
What did you do after leaving the police department?
I worked at a school as an officer. I also taught at a community college and went on to receive further higher education.
Do you frequently appear as a witness in court?
I do, yes.
And when you appear in court, what areas of expertise do you testify on?
A wide range, general police tactics, crime scene reconstruction, cell phone tower analysis.
In how many states have you been accepted as an expert in district courts?
3 states, specifically those of Kansas, Colorado, and Arizona.
And in how many states have you been accepted as an expert in state courts?
4 states, those being Wyoming, Nebraska, New Mexico, and Colorado.
How many times have you been accepted as an expert in crime scene reconstruction?
8 times.
How many times in cell tower analysis?
5 times.
General police investigation tactics?
12 times.
And how many total cases have you consulted in?
I would say 100 times.
Your Honor, I would like to qualify Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics on the grounds of his extensive education and experience as an expert in these fields under Rule 702.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Littlewood. Ms. Thompson?
Yes, I do object to crime scene reconstruction.
Can you give me a little more information there?
Yes, so Mr. Van Owen has not provided the information that he's been a crime scene reconstruction investigator. He hasn't said that he's been to training for crime scene reconstruction. He's merely talked about his police practices and other experience with law enforcement, but he hasn't talked about crime scene reconstruction.
All right, thank you, Ms. Thompson. Mr. Littlewood, can you address those concerns?
Yes, Your Honor. Professor Van Owen testified that he has been accepted as an expert in crime scene reconstruction in numerous courts, and I believe that this would qualify him to be accepted as an expert in this court.
All right, can you just ask him an additional foundation question about that issue?
Do you want me to ask him again how many times he's been accepted as an expert, or further evidence?
His training and background.
Okay. Could you tell us a bit more about your background in crime scene reconstruction?
Certainly, not necessarily specifically to that course, but I did receive a master's degree from Ashford University online. Furthermore, I've taught courses that's earning me the title of professor at CU Denver, again, granting me a certain degree of expertise in a wide range of areas, including crime scene reconstruction.
And in the course of your work, do you ever work with police CSRs?
Yes.
All right.
I think this establishes the proper foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Littlewood. I will overrule the objection of the prosecution at this time and admit Mr. Van Owen to testify as an expert on those subjects. You may continue, Mr. Littlewood.
Thank you, Your Honor. In your work at the case at hand, what police evidence did you review in forming your opinions?
I reviewed the evidence gathered by both Detective Markowitz and Mrs. Kuzak.
I'm going to ask you now about some of your specific issues with Kuzak's conclusions. What is Kuzak's theory of how the confrontation occurred between the victim and the intruder in the victim's home?
Generally, as Ms. Kuzak earlier said today, she alluded to the fact that the intruder would have come in, had an altercation with the victim, and stabbed him with a knife from Mr. Brackman's kitchen.
What evidence did Kuzak use to back up this theory?
He alludes to scuff marks near the entrance, which I find very flawed as a way of determining whether or not there was an altercation.
Why do you believe that the scuff marks are flawed as evidence?
As one would assume, you cannot really date scuff marks. Those could originate from anything. You cannot really carbonate a scuff mark. So as such, I would not use that as concrete evidence.
And is there any evidence to contradict Kuzak's theory?
Yes, I think I heard it discussed earlier, but the fact that the knife did not match whatsoever with the knife found in the knife block.
Moving on, are you aware that Brackman had Ring doorbells set up at his residence?
I am aware, yes.
Did the police make an investigation to determine if Brackman had push notifications on for these Ring doorbells?
No.
Would this have been within their power?
It would have, yes.
Now let's move on to your evaluation of Detective Markowitz's investigation. Were you present in the courtroom today during the testimony of Taylor Perkins?
I was.
Do you recall Perkins' statement that during the time of the murder, Perkins and Avery were searching for Avery's lost phone at the mall?
Yes, I did hear that.
Were you aware of this fact prior to the trial today?
Yes.
Since Avery did not have their phone during the time of the murder, even if the cell tower records indicated that their phone was near the victim's house, would that mean that Avery was near the victim's house?
It would not. That would be equating a phone to a person, which is not a good practice.
Did the detectives look at the cell tower data for Taylor Perkins' phone?
They did not, no.
Would this have been within their power?
It certainly would have, and would have been very key evidence.
Did you view the cell tower data for Taylor Perkins' phone?
I did.
And what did this data indicate?
It reaffirms the story just told by Taylor that, in fact, Taylor and Avery were at the mall searching for the phone, presumably.
In reviewing the evidence for this case, did you view the screenshots of the text messages shown in Exhibit 14?
I did, yes.
Do you take any issue with these screenshots?
Major issue, again, the authenticity is certainly under question, as there's no real timestamp and no real confirmation that, in fact, is Avery.
And during your investigation, did you develop any other suspects for this crime?
Yes, one Blair Rollins.
What was Blair Rollins' relation to Mackenzie Brackman?
Blair Rollins was the son of a former client of Mr. Brackman who was sentenced to prison.
What was the name of the former client?
Jonathan Rollins.
What was the sentence given to Jonathan Rollins?
Life.
Is Blair Rollins roughly the same build as Avery Becker?
More or less, yes.
Where's Blair Rollins now?
Not within the state. I've not been able to find Blair Rollins.
Did the police ever investigate Blair Rollins?
They alluded to his existence, but did not ever investigate any real involvement.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Thompson?
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about your work experience. You were a police officer for 8 months?
At the Aurora Police Department.
And then you quit?
Yes, I opted to change my career, yes.
And so after you couldn't make it as a police officer, you decided to be an SRO?
Yes, I don't know if I'd frame it as I couldn't make it. I more opted to switch professions towards an SRO.
So after you opted to switch professions from being an SRO, you decided to be a mall cop?
Yes, it was within the same line of work, very similar premise.
And after you didn't continue your career as a mall cop, you decided to be a private security guard?
Yes, I don't know how many have careers in being a mall cop, but yes, I shifted once more.
And with all of this experience, you decide to start a private practice?
Yes, well, you're neglecting the fact that I also sought higher education to ensure that I was well trained and capable of also.
But with all of you use that limited experience in your practice today?
Objection, Your Honor. The counsel is testifying. They are using words that the witness has not said themselves, such as limited experience.
Your Honor, may I respond?
All right. Mr. Littlewood, your objection is overruled. The attorney may question how she pleases, but Ms. Thompson, please be advised that you must let the witness finish his statements. Don't speak over him. You may continue.
Okay. Thank you. With the limited experience that you had from each of these different career paths that you've chosen, you decided to start a private practice?
Again, that is correct, but you are once more neglecting the fact that I sought a higher education in general criminal practices.
And you went to get that online education? It was online?
Yes, which again earned me the title of professor as I have taught courses at a university.
Let's talk a little bit about your investigation. You said you performed a partial investigation?
Yes, it was partial as I came in to more or less find the details that were gravely lacking from the work done by Ms. Kuzak and Detective Markowitz.
And you were hired by Avery Becker?
Yes, I'm consulted by the defense.
And you were hired to prove her innocence?
Well, I was hired to find the information that in many respects might find that she is not the actual suspect because of the information gathered through my investigation.
And during your partial investigation, you looked at Kyle Kuzak and Jordan Markowitz's investigation?
Yes, I took the evidence gathered by both of them and used it in part of my own investigation.
But you didn't perform a full investigation of your own?
No, again, I used the information found by the two present here today.
So that was a no?
No.
Let's talk a little bit about other suspects. You believe Blair Rollins is a suspect?
I believe Blair Rollins is a legitimate suspect who should have been looked into by the Denver Police Department.
And you believe that Blair Rollins matches the height and build of Avery Becker?
More or less, yes.
But you never had an interview with Blair Rollins?
I was unable to because Blair Rollins left the state after not being investigated by the Denver Police Department.
But you didn't have an interview with Blair Rollins?
I was unable to.
You didn't call Blair Rollins?
Again, if Blair Rollins could not be found, I could not achieve these tasks.
And you tried to search for her through Google? Tried to search for him through Google?
Through all means, I tried to, as a very legitimate suspect, I tried to find Blair Rollins, yes.
But after Google didn't help you, you were unsuccessful in finding Blair Rollins?
Correct. Again, this was a job that hypothetically could have been done by the Denver Police Department that they failed to do.
But in your investigation, your partial investigation, you decided not to look into your only suspect?
Well, not necessarily. Again, I looked into her to the extent that, or him, and to the extent that I was able to. But again, I wasn't able to because Blair Rollins is not accessible.
And you were unable to talk to your only suspect?
Correct. Also a suspect that should have been looked at by the Denver Police Department.
Let's talk a little bit about Kyle Kuzak. You know Kyle Kuzak professionally?
I have worked with Ms. Kuzak before, yes.
And you believe Ms. Kuzak is egotistical?
A tad, yes. She can.
And prideful? Oh, sorry.
I believe that the previous question calls for unfair character evidence.
Explain further, Mr. Littlewood.
Your Honor, this question asks the witness to testify as to one of their traits, their general attitude towards Kyle Kuzak. and is trying to use that trait as evidence that they might have acted in a certain way in regard to a certain event.
Your Honor, may I
All right.
respond?
You may, Ms. Thompson.
Can I get a rule number on your objection?
Sure.
Yes, Rule 404.
And this is not character evidence. Mr. Van Owen is merely explaining what his thoughts of Kyle Kuzak were from his perception from seeing them at events. He's not saying this is what they are. He's just saying his perception and his personal opinion.
All right, thank you. I will overrule the objection on Rule 404. Stick to the use here, Ms. Thompson, that's appropriate under the rule. Go ahead.
You believe Kyle Kuzak is prideful?
Yes, on a certain level, yes.
And you're here today testifying, pointing out what you believe to be the holes in Kyle Kuzak's investigation?
That is correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Mr. Littlewood, any redirect? It looks like I think you have about 3 minutes left.
Yes, briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
What investigations did you do of your own for this case?
Well, I did conduct my own investigation. For example, I tried to find Blair Rollins. Again, I used the information already gathered by the detective and Ms. Kuzak, and used that to formulate my entire investigation.
And when investigating Blair Rollins, did you view Blair Rollins' attendance records?
Yes.
And on the day of the murder, where was Blair Rollins present at school?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Van Owen. I believe you are excused at this time.
Thank you.
Does that conclude the defense's presentation of evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. At this point in time, let's prepare for closing statements. If we can have both attorneys activate their video for that. Mr. Littlewood. And timekeepers, what is the time allowed on the closing statement?
5 minutes.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Chamberlain. Are you making closing arguments on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Get out, get in, get even. Ladies and gentlemen, today you heard the story of Mackenzie Brackman. Mackenzie Brackman was a local defense attorney and coach for the mock trial team at CHS High School. He spent his days tirelessly working to defend the people who had been accused of crimes and some other people might not even give a second look to. After spending his days defending these people, he would go off and donate his time to the local mock trial team at Colorado High School. He believed in these kids and he saw their potential for what they could truly do. But as you saw here today, not all of the students appreciated him as their coach. Avery Becker did not appreciate him as her coach and even went as far as to write Worst Attorney Award on his car. Ladies and gentlemen, today you heard the story of how Avery Becker got in to Mr. Brackman's house after being told to get out of mock trial and out of Mr. Brackman's life. The prosecution has shown you how Avery Becker got even through trashing his house, which resulted in his death. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution called 3 witnesses today. We called Jordan Markowitz, Kyle Kuzak, and finally Alex Cifuentes. Jordan Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak showed us how Avery Becker got in to Mr. Brackman's house through the ring videos and the cell tower data
Alex Cifuentes told us how Avery Becker was told to get out of mock trial and out of Mr. Brackman's life. She also showed us the text messages that Avery sent her saying she was going to get in to Mr. Brackman's house. The defense also called 3 witnesses today. The defense called Blake Van Owen, Taylor Perkins, and Avery Becker. Blake Van Owen is being paid to be here today and to find Avery Becker innocent. Taylor Perkins is completely biased because she is Avery Becker's best friend, and as you heard today, would do anything for Avery. And finally, Avery Becker. Avery Becker would do anything to be on mock trial and anything to save herself. Ladies and gentlemen, we showed you how Avery Becker got out of mock trial and out of Mr. Brackman's life. We showed you how Avery Becker got in to Mr. Brackman's house through the ring videos and cell tower data. And we showed you how Avery Becker got even by trashing his house. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Mr. Littlewood?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, the mere fact that we are here in court today is a gross miscarriage of justice by the Denver Police Department. Humans are complex creatures with complex problems. The police investigation in this case is an effort to explain a complex problem with a simple solution that simply doesn't fit. From the beginning of this investigation, Markowitz and Kuzak made up their minds about who they thought had committed this crime and followed only the lines of evidence which suited their premature conclusions, despite the fact that these conclusions simply do not make sense in context. In each and every foundational piece of evidence to the prosecution's case, they've failed to properly establish that evidence. The most important piece of evidence to their case, in fact, the only piece of evidence which could potentially tie Avery Becker to these crimes, is the series of text messages provided by Alex Cifuentes. As evidence of these text messages, we have only the screenshots provided to the police by Cifuentes. These screenshots do not show the time, nor the date, nor the phone number of the sender, and thus have not been accepted as valid evidence by this court. Searching Cifuentes' phone to verify the validity of these messages was well within the rights and ability of the police department, but they failed to do so. This gross incompetence simply cannot be held up as an imitation of a proper investigation. In addition to their failure to properly establish their own evidence, the police have also made far too much of evidence they were able to properly collect while conveniently ignoring any evidence which did not suit their theory. The police used cell tower analysis of Avery Becker's phone to try to prove that Avery was at the victim's house around the time the murder took place. However, cell tower analysis cannot be relied on to show the exact location of a device. And even so, Avery was not in possession of her phone at the time, having lost it the previous night. At the time of the murder, Avery and Taylor were at the mall trying to find her lost phone, an alibi the police completely neglected to investigate. The police could have viewed Taylor's cell tower records to substantiate this alibi, but they neglected to do so. However, Professor Blake Van Owen did view the data, and Taylor's cell tower records showed that they were at the mall when the murder took place. Now, consider this. In either theory of this case, someone has to be lying. Either Alex Cifuentes is lying about Avery sending these text messages, or Taylor Perkins is lying about Avery being with him at the mall when the murder took place. No evidence exists to prove that Cifuentes received these messages from Avery, and they have been denied as valid evidence by this court. Meanwhile, Professor Blake Van Owen has used cell tower data to prove that Taylor Walken was at the mall when the murder took place. The police elected to ignore this fact because it does not suit their premature and unfounded theory. In failing to consider other theories, the police ignored any other suspects they encountered, such as Blair Rowlands. One way or another, the police were aware that Blair Rowlands fled the state following when the murder occurred, and after Brackman had lost a case wherein Blair's father was sentenced to life in prison. Even with such a compelling suspect, the police elected not to investigate because it did not suit their theory. It is clear that the police had already made up their minds about who they thought had committed this crime and only followed the lines of evidence which suited their theory. Now, Avery Becker, in all reality, is just a kid. And yes, when she got kicked off the mock trial team, she was angry. But it is completely absurd that a simple and harmless disagreement over something as mundane as mock trial is being presented as a motive for murder. The burden of proof today is on the prosecution. They must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker has committed these crimes. You may find reasonable doubt in the inability of the police to establish the validity of the text messages, in their firm resolve to ignore any evidence which did not suit their theory, in their outlandish conclusions based on the cell tower data, or in the absurdity of a mock trial dispute being presented as a motive for murder, or furthermore, in the glaring fact that at the time of the murder, Avery Becker was with their friend Taylor Perkins at the mall. And as everyone knows, you can't be in two places at once. This investigation is a gross miscarriage of justice, a window into the incompetencies of the Denver Police Department, and an effort to explain a complex situation with a simple answer that simply doesn't fit. Nothing about the prosecution's theory of this case makes sense. Return a verdict of not guilty.
All right. Looks like we lost the video there for our other attorney, but that's all right. All right, that concludes our trial at this point in time. Well done, folks. I think there was excellent presentations here by both sides. We are running a bit behind schedule, but if we want to take just a few moments for our scoring participants to give some feedback, and then I'm supposed to remind the scoring participants not to log out or turn off your form until we know that it has been received, because it sounds like it resets that form. So we don't want to lose everything you've put in there. I'll give them just a few moments to finish up there with the forms they're working with. And then if either of our three scoring participants want to hop on and make some comments, we can take just a few moments to do that. We've got our host on here still. Remind me the timing of the next round. Is it 1:30 or 2?
The next round, Your Honor, starts at 2 p.m.
Okay, so we certainly want to give everyone some time to regroup, and maybe we can take about 10 minutes to do comments. Is that all right?
That
Your
should
Honor,
work.
I'm happy to do some comments.
Great, thanks, Ms. Peterson.
Okay. Generally, this would go for both teams, that I thought everyone was well prepared. They understood and had a comprehensive grasp on their facts and the process. Everybody did a really nice job of understanding direct questioning versus cross-exam questioning. Some folks, whether it was witness or open or close, if they were reading statements, they tended to read really quickly. And so on this Zoom format, it was particularly difficult to hear sometimes. So I would just caution people to slow down a little bit. This coming from someone who is an expert at reading really quickly. So it's not necessarily a critical critique. It's just coming from someone that gets that all the time. I thought both sides really organized their openings and their closings really well, and I liked the way they brought their themes full circle to a close. You know, get in, get out, get even, complex problem, simple answer. Those were very impactful for me as someone listening as a potential juror. And then I would just say everyone did a really fabulous job at handling the unique circumstances of this virtual format. I have scored mock trial probably for the last 10 years, every year save for last year. I think regionals actually were held, but I was in the hospital at that time, so I had to bug out. But it was definitely a unique circumstance, but it really didn't get in the way of presentation and listening for me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Peterson. I'm sure the students really appreciate that feedback. Hi.
Hello, this is Marco Scalisi. I just want to thank you all for your hard work. You can tell you put a ton of time and effort into this, and this is a really tough setting to have to do this, and well done in plowing forward and adapting to tough circumstances. I think that I would. Much of what Diane said, I concur with. It was organized. You can see you had a strategy. You followed through with that strategy. It was nice to hear that some of the objections you actually cited rules and tried to make sure that it was based on not just what you thought should happen, but what the rules dictated that should happen. You can tell that you had a good command. Both of you had, both sides had a good command of the facts of each particular case. And again, with what Diane said, I think that something you just really want to focus on is not being so tied to your written material that you're not making eye contact. You're showing that you're just reading from a script. That takes a bit away from some of the impact you're trying to make on the listeners. And I would commend both sides on your witnesses. I think did a good job, and especially I think that on the defense side, I think that your witnesses kind of went a little above and beyond in the way they presented and made it fun to listen to, and their responses were tight with respect to what the facts were. So well done, everyone.
Thank you. There's Ms. Fisher.
Thank you, Your Honor. I really don't have much to add to my two predecessors here. I thought, considering the circumstances and of technology that you're required to use this time, I thought you all coordinated that very well. That's a big hurdle, even if you're in a courtroom trying to get the technology to work. And I think the biggest thing that I noticed for both teams is that you made a good effort in your planning to anticipate what the objections would be, or where the storylines would go. That's very difficult to do. And I thought you made great attempts, both sides, to predict where the argument was going. And most of the time you were prepared with a response on these objections. So well done on that. I think overall, going out on round one, you guys did a great job. And if you slow your speak and be a little more thoughtful in your looking at the camera, you guys have nailed it. So great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Great feedback. I just want to commend all of the participants on their demeanor throughout the competition. I know it's always difficult to maintain a professional facade when you're thinking on your feet, or when you get a ruling you're not expecting, or comments from a witness you're not expecting. And I thought you all handled that very well, and well above a high school level. So congratulations, folks. You've completed the first round, and I think you have something to certainly be proud of. If we can get our host on here just to let people know what to do from here. I'm assuming the students log out while we keep the scoring jurors present. Do I have that right?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we dismiss the scoring panelists, I need to get a confirmation from the coordinators, but the students can log off and prepare for the next round.
All right. Thank you. Good luck to all of you. All right, we've still got quite a few people on. Ms. Peterson, do you think you were able to complete your sheet? Did you have any issues or concerns?
It looks like it went through. I don't have a submit button on the page anymore.
Okay, so we'll hang tight and get feedback from someone else more efficient.